Betelgeuse used to be a massive main sequence star early in its life. During this phase, it primarily fused hydrogen into helium in its core, like most stars do during their longest and most stable periods. However, given its immense mass, Betelgeuse had a much shorter main sequence lifespan compared to other smaller stars like the Sun. Hi everyone, Vega here, and in today's video we continue our Brightest Star series and return to take a look at one of the most famous stars of all and delve into its past, Betelgeuse. So, let's get to it. Like all stars, as it evolved, Betelgeuse exhausted the hydrogen in its core and transitioned into a red supergiant, which is the phase we observe today. Indeed, many talk about the possibility of Betelgeuse going bang, and even within our lifetimes. Now personally I think it's extremely unlikely, although the star, as you may know, has been exhibiting strange dimmings over the past few years, and there is something certainly afoot in the Alpha Orionis system. Of course, the star is now fusing heavier elements in its core as it moves towards the end of its stellar life. Hydrogen to helium to carbon and oxygen. Stars like Betelgeuse are destined to end in a dramatic supernova explosion, leaving behind either a neutron star or a black hole. Isn't it fascinating how these stars go through such extreme transformations? But the question that isn't often asked is, what were they like before? In this mini-series we're looking at famous stars and what they were like before they left the main sequence. Don't forget to check out the first in this series on Capella or Alpha Aurigae if you haven't already. Estimations at Alpha Orionis' mass range between 14 and 19 solar masses, and the star is at, as we've already said, a very late stage in its lifetime, with estimations of its age between 8 and 14 million years, which when compared to our Sun's 5 billion years, it really does put things into perspective. But be that as it may, in this table we see a summarising of the main spectral types of stars, along with their expected lifetimes, temperature ranges, mass ranges and other characteristics, and it becomes fairly clear that Betelgeuse certainly wasn't in anything but the top two, O and B categories. As we see, the A category is just far too small to accommodate a star of the size of Betelgeuse, and indeed the B category starts at just 2.1 solar masses, and let me remind you, Betelgeuse is thought to be between 14 and 19 solar masses. If we continue to break this table down by O and B spectral classes and their subcategories, for example O0 to O9 and B0 to B9, we can see that Alpha Orionis' current mass would have it nestled in between the O and B categories, possibly at the very top end of B0 or at the very bottom of the O class at O9. Of course, this means that the star would have been blue in colour and probably had a temperature of between 25 and 30,000 Kelvin. That said, however, we're really just not sure about how much mass the star has lost during its transition between main sequence and supergiant. So let's say it's more likely that the original Betelgeuse star was in the O class rather than the B, and therefore any similarities you might have expected perhaps between the Beta star and Orion Rigel and Betelgeuse are pretty slim really. Rigel, which we will look at soon enough in this mini-series, isn't on the main sequence either, but is an altogether different type of star. Some stars that hover on the edge of B and O classes, powerhouses, but still on the main sequence, are the joint binary stars of Acrux AA1 and AA2 that carry the designations of B0.54 and B15 respectively. Acrux AA1 is slowly evolving off the main sequence, but AA2 remains solidly within it, and in terms of size they are 15 to 17 solar masses respectively, which also seem to fit the description we're looking for. Acrux, however, unlike Betelgeuse, is a multiple star system, and interestingly enough, Betelgeuse is actually quite rare in that regard, being a solitary star. Even its cousin Antares has a partner to share its time and space with. The star of Zeta Ophiuchi, which has a 09.5 main sequence designation, seems to fit almost perfectly into the slot of former Betelgeuse, but its mass is slightly larger than Betelgeuse's estimate at around 20 solar masses, so Betelgeuse would probably have had to lose considerable mass during its evolution to have been a star like Zeta Ophiuchi, although we cannot of course rule that out. Another curious mystery about the star's past is that starting from its present position and motion, a projection back in time places Betelgeuse around 950 light years away from the galactic plane, which puts it in a somewhat implausible location, as there isn't really any star formation region there. Neither does Betelgeuse's projected pathway appear to intersect with any star formation clusters, so it seems likely that Betelgeuse has not always had its current motion through space, and crucially therefore, has had its course changed at one time or another. If we continue the speculation, what all this means is that it's highly possible the star was involved in a nearby stellar explosion, Maybe Betelgeuse did actually have a stellar partner, much like the Acrux stars have today, but a more massive and even hotter star that snuffed its own life out much quicker than Betelgeuse and blew the famous red star completely off course. History aside, Betelgeuse is certainly one of the most famous, if not even the most famous star other than the Sun. Ask a random person on the street to name a star other than our own, and obviously discounting a large chunk of folks who've got no interest in stars whatsoever and probably can't name any. More often than not, they'll probably respond with Betelgeuse. The fate of the red star remains unclear, and it's not set in stone whether the star will go supernova and leave behind either a black hole or possibly a neutron star, with the latter probably more likely, but much depends on the size of the stellar core inside the large red blob. Betelgeuse is a large red supergiant star in the last vestiges of its life cycle. Many millions of years ago, the star expanded into its current configuration, but before that it's likely it wasn't all that different to the principal stars of Acrux, or indeed the O-type star of Zeta Ophiuchi, which all reside in our immediate 1000 light-year vicinity. Possibly due to a cataclysmic event in its path, Betelgeuse is now hurtling away from any obvious paths, and indeed is fading away from our solar system. The only question remaining though, is whether or not we'll see the Betelgeuse fireworks display before our time is up. Thanks for watching, consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you'd like to support the channel further, you could consider joining the channel, or alternatively buy me a coffee and I'll link this in the description. Take really good care of yourselves, look after your friends and family as well, and I'll see you on the next one.